All right, I'm going to bring up our next speaker here on the Success Live Tour here at the Thought Leader Summit in Hollywood, California. He is a well-respected estate planning attorney and a financial advisor. He's got more than 26 years of experience providing clients the legal and financial advice that they need. He's known as a trusted advocate for his clients' financial future and helps his clients receive unbiased advice for proper estate planning through his firm, DuPont Wealth Solutions. His combination of financial, legal, and fee-based services ensure that his clients meet their financial goals with a tremendous amount of success. Please welcome to the Thought Leader Summit stage my good friend, Greg DuPont.
Thanks, Greg. Good morning. Change, breakthrough, epiphany, turning points. No matter what you call it, we can all identify certain times in our life where we made some change that we can directly trace to where we are today. And today I'm going to share with you two of those such changes in my life that have led me here to a stage in Hollywood at a Thought Leader Summit, a place where I never expected to be. That first change occurred approximately 15 years ago. I was in a conference room in Phoenix, Arizona, and we are at the end of 3 days of depositions in a trust dispute lawsuit. It sounds like fun, right? And I sat there across the conference room table from 3 other attorneys as we wrapped that day up. And something bothered me by the way they were chumming around and sharing stories of what they had been doing during their 3-day, all-expenses-paid trip to Arizona. And that continued to gnaw on me as I drove back to my hotel that night. And as I sat there at the TPC Grill, maybe some of you have been there before, relaxing with my martini, Bombay Sapphire, shaken, not stirred. And it dawned on me what was causing this dis-ease. And it was the fact that those 3 attorneys, as well as myself, were all there on that crusade on my client's dime. And it further occurred to me that the reason why my client was in this situation was because both the financial services industry and the legal profession had let that family down. See, in this situation, the widow that relied upon a financial advisor and an attorney had people that looked at her as a transaction, not as a human being. And because they looked at her as a transaction, not as a human being, there was never any effort to build a relationship of trust. And because there was no relationship of trust, when it was time for her to change her plans and eliminate the charities that the 3 attorneys were representing from her plans so that her family was benefited, she called the only person she trusted, her son, who went forth and took care of things the way he thought they needed to be done. And that backfired. So I decided that night that I was going to change my practice, I was going to change my way of dealing with my clients so that that would never happen to any of my clients. And that set forth a plan that evening, that flight back that next day, where I developed and built a law firm focused around people and long-term needs and long-term relationships. And over the years past that, I was able to grow my law firm as well as a financial advisory practice to serve that need. So that's the one training point that I want to share with you. I've got another one I'm going to share with you, then hopefully a third one that I'm going to deliver to you. The second turning point was last summer when I was prompted, as many of you in this room have been, as I've talked to you throughout the course of the last day and a half, to a higher calling. See, I had done well building those businesses, serving my client base, building my client base, but I felt I needed to do more. And as I reflected upon that, I decided that I was going to set a goal for myself, which at that time seemed like that big, fat, hairy, audacious goal that we've all talked about, right? In the context of today, it may not be as audacious, and I may have to revisit it, but at that time it was. And that was for me to positively impact 1 million lives before I turn 65 on September 30 of 2030. And that decision is what changed my path to lead me to where I am today, to deliver this message to you about your future. You see, as I built those two businesses, I was not satisfied by what the industries were telling me. Had I done that, I would never have done both of them, because the legal profession says you should never do financial advisory work because you could have a conflict of interest. I say, conflict of interest? If I am doing what is clearly in my client's best interest, there is no conflict. But toward that end, I needed to investigate the industry. I needed to be able to satisfy myself that at all times I was giving my clients the best interest for them. And with my studies, I have found several traps and tricks of the financial advisory world, financial services industry, as I like to call it, the financial industrial complex, that marriage between Madison Avenue and Wall Street. And that marriage has generated many, many traps. The one I want to talk to you about today, I want you to take home today, because I believe this is a turning point for many of you. And that is what I call the retirement tax trap. You see, since the early 1980s, when the 401k industry was foisted upon our citizens, you in this room, there has been a fundamental planning philosophy that says that you would be better off by taking your tax deduction now, holding those money in tax-deferred accounts, and then pulling it out when you're in retirement. Because, theoretically, your personal income tax rates will be lower in retirement. Now, first of all, let me ask you, who in this room wants to lower your standard of living in retirement? Seldom do I get that answer, okay? Now, we cannot ignore there are certain fundamental social, economic, and political factors that are at play. In 1960, there were approximately 16 workers for every one person receiving Social Security in retirement. Currently, that's closer to 3 to 1. And in 2035, 5 years after my goal, it's projected to be 2 to 1. Okay? And folks, this is a problem that we cannot birth away. We know what the economy is like now. We know what that's doing to birth rates. Nor is this a problem that we can immigrate away. So no matter how many people come from other countries, we cannot solve this fundamental problem, because it's happening across all of the industrialized world. We are all, as economies, as citizenships, getting older. So that's a demographic trend that we cannot fight. Second thing we cannot fight is the economic trends. We have all heard about debt and deficit until we're sick of hearing about it. But there are a couple things I want you to understand about debt and deficit as it comes to our country. You see, historically, amongst the organized nations, we are obviously one of the highest debtor nations. But more importantly for this discussion, our ratio of income generated for the government from our GDP is historically amongst the lowest. So these factors are what are driving the probability that income tax rates will increase in the future. Regardless of whether that happens, as I contend it does, we are still being set up. Understand that when you are keeping your money in a tax-deferred account, which is what Madison Avenue and Wall Street want you to do, you are forced to take approximately 3 times the amount of risk to have the same amount of money in your pocket in retirement as if you put those monies in a different type of account. Not only that, but I have people come to my office all the time and say, hey, Greg, here's my plan. I am going to retire. I am going to be debt-free. We're paying off our house. Great, fantastic. What about your IRA? What do you mean? Well, you have $500,000 there. How much is that worth? $500,000. No, it's not worth $500,000 because there is taxes on there. See, if you were a good steward of that $500,000 in your account, and you took out the required distributions and all those type of things, that $500,000 is in your account. If you lived to the age of 90, you would end up paying approximately $360,000 in taxes on that $500,000. There's another way. We need to change our way of thinking. You in this room can change your way of thinking and protect yourself from what is already existing in terms of the tax trap and what is being built in terms of our demographics and our economics. So if you want to learn any more about this, the way I operate my business, I invite you to check my website out at www.meetyourfinancialadvocate.com. Again, that's www.meetyourfinancialadvocate.com. And here's to, hopefully, having given you some information today that you'll look back 20, 30 years in the future and say, that was a turning point for me. Thank you.